Imagine you're walking down a street when suddenly a strange shape appears before you. It seems to morph and shift in impossible ways. Parts of it appear and disappear, growing and shrinking without apparent cause. This isn't just any object. It's a four-dimensional hypercube passing through our three-dimensional world. What you're witnessing is how beings from higher dimensions would appear to us, as reality-bending entities whose very existence challenges everything we understand about the world. Today we're exploring one of the most mind-bending questions in theoretical physics. What would communication with higher dimensional beings, from 4D all the way to 11D entities, actually be like? The dimensional ladder we're about to climb isn't just about adding more coordinates to locate something. Each new dimension represents an exponential leap in perception and capability that would appear increasingly godlike from our limited three-dimensional perspective. And with each step up this ladder, the possibility of meaningful communication becomes exponentially more challenging, if not impossible. Let's start with the fourth dimension. While we experience time as the fourth dimension, imagine a spatial fourth dimension, a direction perpendicular to all three dimensions we know. A four-dimensional being would see our world in a way that's fundamentally impossible for us to comprehend. Imagine how a three-dimensional being, you, perceives a two-dimensional world like a piece of paper. You can see everything inside that 2D world simultaneously, including the insides of closed 2D shapes. Similarly, a 4D entity would see everything in our 3D world at once, including the insides of closed objects and the interiors of our bodies. This creates our first profound communication barrier. How do you explain the concept of inside to a being that never experiences it? For them, your body isn't a sealed container, but an open structure, with every organ simultaneously visible. A 4D being could quite literally reach into your chest and touch your heart without breaking your skin, simply by lifting it through the fourth dimension, a direction you can't perceive or defend against. This isn't science fiction, it's established mathematics. Mathematicians model these higher dimensional objects using projective geometry. Just as a cube casts a square shadow, four-dimensional objects cast three-dimensional shadows when they intersect our world. The mathematical models for these objects, like tesseracts and hyperspheres, are completely consistent with our understanding of geometry. Now let's climb higher to the fifth dimension. If a 4D being transcends space, a 5D entity transcends time itself. Instead of experiencing time as a linear progression, they would perceive all of time simultaneously, seeing your entire timeline from birth to death as a single static object. Imagine your whole life as a long, snake-like structure stretching from your birth to your death, with every moment of your existence represented along its length. A 5D being wouldn't watch your life unfold. They'd see the entire thing at once. This creates an even more profound communication barrier. How do you explain cause and effect to a being that perceives all causes and their effects simultaneously? For them, your birth, your current moment watching this, and your eventual death aren't sequential events. They're simply different regions of a static time solid that has always existed. The 5D entity wouldn't understand why you can't simply move to different points in your timeline, just as you don't understand why a 2D being can't step out of its plane. This concept connects directly to Einstein's view of time as the fourth dimension in his theory of relativity. The block universe interpretation suggests that all of time, past, present, and future, exists simultaneously, and our perception of now moving forward is just a psychological experience, not a fundamental aspect of reality. A 5D entity would perceive this block universe directly. Moving up to the sixth and seventh dimensions introduces an even more radical expansion of perception. These dimensions aren't just about space and time, but about possibility itself. A 6D being would perceive not just our timeline, but all possible timelines simultaneously. Every version of reality where you made different choices or events happened differently. The multiverse wouldn't be a theoretical concept, but directly observable reality. Imagine a being that could see and navigate between a universe where you became an astronaut, another where you became a musician, and countless others representing every possible outcome of your life, all existing simultaneously. For them, alternative histories and futures aren't hypothetical. They're simply different locations in a higher dimensional landscape. The communication barriers with 6D and 7D beings become nearly insurmountable. How would you explain concepts like truth, reality, or what actually happened to entities that directly perceive all possibilities as equally real? Our language itself breaks down because it evolved to describe a single timeline. These beings would experience your potential lives as real as the one you're living now. This connects directly to the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, which suggests that quantum events cause reality to branch into multiple parallel universes. What we experience as probability waves collapsing into definite states, these higher dimensional beings might perceive as simply different regions of a vast possibility space. As we approach the 8th and 9th dimensions, we transcend not just our timeline and possible timelines, but physical law itself. These dimensions would encompass universes with entirely different fundamental constants and physical laws. An 8D or 9D entity wouldn't just see alternate versions of our universe. They would perceive universes where gravity might be billions of times stronger or weaker, where light travels at different speeds, or where entirely different forces exist. This creates perhaps the most profound barrier to communication. Imagine trying to converse with a being that experiences universes where the very mathematics underlying reality is different. Even pure mathematics, often considered the universal language, might fail us here, as beings from these dimensions could experience logical frameworks beyond our comprehension. These concepts connect to the anthropic principle and the fine-tuning problem in cosmology. Our universe's physical constants seem incredibly fine-tuned for life to exist. Higher dimensional beings might perceive the full landscape of possible physical laws and understand why certain combinations produce complex structures like stars, planets, and eventually, life. The capabilities of such entities would appear godlike. They might manipulate fundamental forces like gravity or electromagnetism as easily as we move objects. They could potentially restructure portions of reality by adjusting the underlying physical constants, creating localized regions with different properties. And finally, we reach the 10th and 11th dimensions, the highest dimensions suggested by string theory. At this level, we transcend not just physical law, but reality frameworks themselves. These entities wouldn't be beings in any recognizable sense, but might be better understood as living mathematical principles or abstract patterns that express themselves across all possible realities. Communication with 10D or 11D entities might be less like exchanging messages and more like discovering mathematical truths. Their thoughts might manifest as fundamental patterns woven into reality itself. Perhaps what we perceive as the elegant mathematical underpinnings of the universe, the surprising ways that complex systems follow simple rules, are actually the language of these higher dimensional entities already communicating with us. String theory proposes that reality at its most fundamental level consists of tiny vibrating strings whose vibration patterns determine the properties of particles. These strings exist in 10 or 11 dimensions, with the extra dimensions compactified or curled up so small we can't perceive them. Higher dimensional beings might navigate and manipulate these compact dimensions, accessing aspects of reality forever hidden from us. As we've climbed this dimensional ladder, each step has revealed an exponentially greater perception gap. The difference between a 3D and 4D being might be comparable to the difference between a two-dimensional drawing and you. But the gap between us and an 11D entity would be vastly greater, perhaps like the gap between a single written letter and the entirety of human thought. This journey leads us to a profound form of cosmic humility. Just as a character in a book cannot comprehend the author who exists in a higher dimensional reality outside the page, our three-dimensional minds may be fundamentally incapable of truly comprehending entities from the highest dimensions. Yet mathematics gives us glimpses into these realms, like shadows of higher realities projected into our limited perceptual space. Perhaps higher dimensional beings are already interacting with our reality in ways we fundamentally cannot perceive or understand. Like the character in a book who doesn't realize their entire world exists within the pages held by a reader, we may be embedded within higher realities we cannot directly experience. The most profound implication isn't just that we're limited in what we can perceive, but that what we call reality might be merely a cross-section of something far vaster, a single page in an infinite multidimensional library of existence.